Okay, are we good to go with the
We are
screen
good to
share?
go. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, perfect. Well, hello everyone. Like Sam said, my name is Leslie Heinzler, and one of my colleagues created this background for our PowerPoints. You guys didn't want to see my messy office, so this is our fancy fake boardroom conference room behind me. Um, so today I'm going to talk to you about welcoming digital spaces, how to ensure your web presence is accessible to all. So we're just I'm not able to switch sides here. One second.
If you click on the slide deck itself, you should then be able to advance with the arrow button, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I would be smarter than the PowerPoint. All right. So today we're going to talk just briefly a little bit about our library, just quick overview. We're going to talk about universal design in your library, some basic website and document accessibility, just a quick information about alternative formats and assistive technology, and then a little bit about advocating for accessibility, maybe within your community or library. So our library, most of you may know, is located in downtown Des Moines on 4th Street, just south of Hy-Vee Hall, if you're familiar with that area. We're a regional library of the National Library Service and print disabled, so that is a program administered by the Library of Congress. So we provide books and other materials in alternative formats to Iowans who can't read standard print. Whether this is due to low vision, blindness, a physical disability, or a reading disability. And we have books in Braille, large print, print Braille, audiobooks, and then electronic text, whether that's text or electronic Braille. We also provide playback equipment for our digital audiobooks as well as our Braille, electronic Braille. So we simply say that we serve anyone who cannot read standard prints. We probably serve about 6,000 people throughout the state of Iowa. And we circulate close to 400,000 items per year, give or take. So that's just kind of a quick overview of our library. We do serve all ages. I don't know if I mentioned that. So birth on up. So next, UDL stands for Universal Design for Learning. And maybe you guys have heard this from us before, other places. For this presentation today, I kind of took bits and pieces from stuff we've done over the last few years and combined them into one. So universal design is the design and composition of an environment, whether that's digital or physical, so that it can be accessed, understood, and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, whether regardless of their age, their size, ability, their disability. So it just offers flexibility in the way students, people, patrons use the material, engage with it, and show what they know. So if an environment is accessible, it's usable, it's convenient, it's a pleasure to use, it benefits everyone. So considering this, when designing anything, whether it's a website, whether it's a document, whether it's your physical space, universal design is simply just good design and it's accessible to all people. An example we like to use for universal design is a physical example, but it's the curb cutouts that you see when you come to an intersection. So those were first installed in 1945 for disabled World War II veterans. And obviously they've had a much larger reach than the purpose that they were used for or created for initially. So just building or creating with accessibility and universal design in mind really can help everyone, and maybe not just the target audience that you're going after. So this makes the practice of using your library website, your site usable by as many people as possible. And this includes everything from software, from technology in your library, to websites, to documents that you may create. So UDL and library specifically. So I mentioned before, just design library programming, your web content, your social media posts, instruction sessions. It's a good idea to present all of what you can in various formats, such as text, including images, including video and audio, So you're kind of reaching all users. Checking website accessibility is a good thing to do for your website. I have a couple examples listed there, which we will talk about more here in a little bit. Lighthouse Accessibility Checker, which is a Google product, and then Wave, which is probably what we use the most. So just also thinking about making sure that your computer stations or just areas in the library have assistive technology, or they have multiple forms of information, whether that's like audio directions, where computers have screen readers, Braille if needed. Obviously, not everything you produce is going to need Braille, but just know that it's an option to have that out there. And also the use of captions on library videos. You can do auto captions usually, or you can have transcripts produced for those videos. So just things to keep in mind when you're doing different things in your library. So the impact of universal design, obviously small changes can have huge impacts. You may reach users in your community that you hadn't known about, or maybe that you hadn't reached previously, because you're making things more accessible to all people. Starting from the beginning means you might not have to make any changes in the future or down the road. It's ready to go from the get-go, and all people are able to access your information, your programs, whatever it is you're doing. And then you are creating an inclusive environment for all patrons, which again might bring in new patrons to the library. And then there's no need to adjust programs for each program. You've got it all. You've got it all covered. So now we're going to talk a little more in depth about kind of some web accessibility. There are 4 principles of web accessibility that designers use when they're thinking of designing a website, what content they're putting into their website. And this also helps your online space be as accessible as possible, obviously. So CORE is the acronym often referred to when creating web content. And it stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable, the website information must be easy to perceive with at least one of your end users' senses. So an accessible website implements the content in a way that it's really easy to understand. It isn't exclusive to individuals whose vision is not impaired. People with total blindness and low vision rely on screen readers, and we'll talk more about those in a bit. They can rely on text-to-speech or Braille technologies. And so they should be able to access and process your site easily with these tools. So the bottom line is that anyone should be able to comprehend and digest your online space with ease, basically. The second one is operable. So an easy operable website means you can click, you can touch, you can swipe, you can give voice and keyboard commands to go through the website, the app, the platform, whatever it is they're using. So this should give the user experience a smooth and simple process and allow every user to get where they want and what they want. So functional elements should be easy to use, things like form submissions, links, moving through pages, the different menus, the different buttons. The videos should be able to stream easily and have ability to be paused and or disabled. And then making sure that the audio is clear and good quality. So operable just means basically operating a digital space without any headaches, a smooth, seamless process. The next one is understandable. So basically, just like it says, just keep it simple, easy to understand. Are your messages telling users what to do, how to do it clearly? Is the value of images easily understood because alt text is direct, simple, and short? Are your users easily aware of what you have to offer when reading or hearing or engaging with your web content? So if you're answering no to any of these, it's time to rethink maybe what you've got on your site or the content that you're putting out there. So when a website or web content is easily or is inclusive and easy to understand, really no one is left out. So it's a good idea to be proactive and make your entire website easy to process, with logically organized information that's intuitive and straightforward structure, design, and navigation. Remember that everyone has their own distinct needs, and understandable means understandable to everyone. So last is robust. So the bottom line for robust is your website content should be digestible, easy to consume, process, and navigate. Whether you're using a screen reader, voice command, speech to text, or a braille display, the content of your site should be simple to interpret and consume by every single user. So for the greater good of your brand, your online presence, your library, your audience, it's worth it and imperative for your online presence, your online space to be accessible. So we kind of talked about the basic principles and why your website content needs to be accessible. So now here we're going to talk about some things you can do with your websites and or documents to help improve accessibility. So by making the document or website content accessible, it allows screen readers and other assistive technology to read it correctly and allowing the patron to have the same access to the information as everyone. So we're going to talk about headings. We're going to talk about alt text, color contrast, and color contrast, and hyperlinks, and what you can do for those things to make your site or your content more accessible. So the first one is headings, and kind of want to think about your page as kind of the newspaper example that's listed here on the in the image there. There's an image that says newspaper. H1 is a heading, then there's subheadings H2, H3, and you can go down to H6, heading 6. So formatting and using headings instead of using large or bold text to break content into skimmable sections. This gives your content structure, making it easier to read. And this is really important for screen readers, users who navigate by headings. They can tab through the headings and determine where they are on the page and where they need to go. So, and it also does provide easy visual navigation for those people reading visually, and consistency by breaking the content into manageable chunks or sections. So I know, like, when I read a newspaper, I do like to read. You like to read in chunks. I skim one section, jump to the other section. So when it's divided up into nice heading chunks, I believe it's easier to read. And this is the same for websites, especially with screen readers. So there are 6 levels of headings you can use, and this is all in the code. And I know this is probably over a lot of people's head. It's over mine a lot in the coding part, but you can do up to 6 headings on a page, and you can style it as well. But just remember thinking of your heading layout kind of like the outline of a newspaper. So using alt text is the description of images on a website or in a document. You can put them in Word documents as well. So you want to create alt text that is clear, it's descriptive and valuable. Screen readers use the alt text to read descriptions of images out loud for users with vision impairments, blindness, or even those with cognitive disabilities who may need clarification. Alt text also helps site visitors identify the context of visuals, especially if images, video is disabled due to motion sensitivity or slower loading times. So you do want to write quality alt text. It's absolutely worth it. I have a colleague that uses a screen reader, and that's one of his pet peeves is alt text that isn't there. It'll just be blank. It'll just say image. The screen reader will, or there's too much information there. So for your alt text, you do want to be accurate and concise. You do want to describe the core purpose of the image. Why is it there? What relevant information does the user need to get from it? And it's a good idea to keep it less than 125 characters if possible. And you should avoid, like it says there, don't be redundant. If the image is already described elsewhere on the page, then it doesn't need to be repeated in the alt text. You can just give a brief description and directions on where the longer description is. You don't want to include words like image or graphic of in your text. Screen readers will alert users that it is a graphic or an image. So having those words actually typed in the alt text is just repeating what the screen reader has already said. There is an example of it's on a NASA site, and it's 7 or a few astronauts up on stage, and the alt text is 7 astronauts on stage. And they said that's the good alt text, and then the other alt text was 7 astronauts on stage at so-and-so building at so-and-so time. And that's not as good because that information is not really needed. Just the 7 astronauts on stage is all that was needed, because the place and time and location wasn't really relevant with the information that was being presented with the image. So color, for some reason I cannot say this, color contrast refers to the ratio of text color and background color. And I've included a good color contrast checker website. So it's a good tool to use when checking color contrast. So sometimes, obviously, if you look at a website, sometimes abrasive visuals with colors that clash or make it tricky to make out the text, or little font size and style make it difficult to read on certain web pages. So you just want to make sure your color contrast levels are sufficient. They support the delivery of the message, they're sleek, but they also give everyone the chance to read and see everything clearly. So it's good just to stick with the basics, honestly, with the color contrast. And the color contrast checker, there is like a certain ratio that websites should strive to get, and that contrast checker will tell you your ratio, and it will also suggest colors that would work better for this. And for the color contrast checker, which we'll talk about more about the web accessibility checker tools here in a bit, but you put in your URL in this checker, and it will give you some tips on your contrasts. So the next one is hyperlinks. You want to avoid certain things like click here. You want to use descriptive link text that does not rely on context from the surrounding text. You want to keep the amount of text in the link to a minimum, and avoid using the actual link within the text of the document. So I kind of have some do's and don'ts here. Obviously, so don'ts, you can see to view more new articles about ITS, click here. But instead view more ITS news articles and make ITS news articles the link. So the next one is learn more about our department here with a link. With that linked, do is learn more about information technology services with that part linked. So you just want to pay attention to what you're linking and make the description as short and the link as short as you can. users may have the links read to them by their screen readers. So it'll say link and then it'll say ITS news articles. So that's why when you say click here, it's not really describing their link to them because it knows it's a link, but it doesn't really know where it's going. So just quick information about alternative formats and assistive technology. So like I said at the beginning, our library does provide materials in alternative formats. Our large print font size usually ranges from 16 to 20 points. Our default for materials that we actually have produced and have ordered ourselves is 20 points. We do get commercial large print that is 16 points. But if we have anything produced, we do try and get it to 20 point. Arial font is probably the best font to use. This is good for all users. And really to avoid all caps or bold is something that's better for all users as well. And then the color contrast again, obviously no crazy combinations, crazy color combinations. You kind of want to pay attention to that. For Braille, we are also able to produce and emboss hard copy Braille here for our patrons, as well as libraries who may need something in Braille. Just reach out to us if you feel like you need a document or something in Braille. We're happy to help you with that. We do provide Braille for those who request it for their story walks. So that's something to keep in mind. So I know I've mentioned screen readers a few times. People with various disabilities will browse online with different assistive technology. So using a mouse or conventional tools to navigate digital spaces may be challenging for people with motor disabilities, low vision, and a screen reader and or a Braille display can help with this. There are examples of assistive technology that can be used. So I have listed there that there are I would say all mobile phones, smartphones do have some sort of screen reader technology already on the phone. For iOS, it's VoiceOver. For Android, it's TalkBack. And all that is in your settings in your phone. There is a learning curve in using VoiceOver. I've only used VoiceOver. I have not used TalkBack, but there is definitely a learning curve in mastering that. It's different swipes and taps on the phone to get your phone to respond. But it is there in most phones. So for computer, for desktop, for laptops, NVDA is a free software that you can download onto into any computer, and it's a great screen reading tool. There is also JAWS. That one does cost money, and you do purchase it on a subscription basis. And I would say that if a patron comes into the library and they want to use a screen reader, it's not your responsibility, obviously, to show them how to use the screen reader. Just tell them where they can find it, what computer, and they should be able to take it from there. As long as they're proficient in screen reading technologies. So a Braille display is another thing that a person can hook up to a computer, and it will read. So they have a refreshable Braille display. It's about the size, depending, but it's about the size of maybe a smaller paperback book. And the Braille cells will raise and lower as they're reading through the website, the document, whatever it is they're connected to it. So that's something that other patrons use. Oh, yeah. So there is a need to advocate for accessibility, I think, within your community or your library. So we're going to talk about culture and community. You want to connect with your disabled patrons to know their library experiences. Sometimes it can take just one bad experience. Obviously, we all know this, to turn someone off from the library for whatever it is they're doing. So making things inclusive and accessible to change perceptions and help that person come back to the library or start using the library. You want to maybe find disability organizations in your area that you could work with. Maybe plan a program around that organization, informational or otherwise. You can advocate for community concerns. Be that advocate in your library, community, town for accessibility when planning programs, services, equipment, purchasing databases, things like that. And then obviously we all want to do this. We don't like to do it. It's boring. Review out-of-date policies to make sure there's inclusive language included. And then of course, always work with local government to have a community-wide accessibility plan. Customer service, we all know libraries are great at customer service. So just reviewing library accessibility policies or create one if necessary. You can research other libraries and see what they do for accessibility. You can collaborate with staff to review building accessibility, and this can also include web accessibility. We can address UDL and accessibility when purchasing new equipment and programs for the library. So you always want to think about that, like I mentioned earlier, when purchasing new equipment, whether it's, purchasing databases or subscribing to new databases, different resources and planning programs. And then have a procedure in place for requests for accommodations if there is a patron or somebody in your community who does need some sort of accommodation. And then technology. So making sure your website is accessible, like we kind of talked before. You can do self-testing. Wave is a good tool to use. It is a web accessibility evaluation tool. You can enter your web address and it will scan the site and then identifies ways to make the site more accessible. It will give you where they think there are errors, where there's color contrast issues, and then it'll give you what they also call alerts, where there's things you could possibly do different in that area. And I can put the web address for that in the chat. Lighthouse is another one. It's a Google product. You can find it under Chrome Developer Tools. I personally like the Wave one better. It's pretty easy to use. And then of course you can always hire an accessibility company to help you figure out issues on your site or when you're making a new site. It's a good thing to have staff be aware of what assistive tech is available in your library and how to use it. So if you have a screen reader, make sure everyone knows where it is, basically how to turn it on. And then the patron should be able to take it from there. And then of course, asking about accessibility when acquiring new technology, whether that's databases, equipment, programs. So web accessibility inherently improves user experience for everyone. So it creates kind of a win-win situation for the organization, for people visiting your site, your Facebook page, and then particularly those online users who have disabilities. So with inclusive design and content layout, you can simplify your site navigation, and then you're driving maybe more users, more interactivity, you're increasing engagement, and you're just helping the library community, your community in general. This is accessible to all. Well, that is all I have. I feel like I just whipped through that very fast, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Leslie. I haven't seen any questions come through as yet. So we can give folks a moment to just do that while they are thinking of potential questions. Really appreciated some of the advocacy stuff that you covered there, and wonder if you can kind of just give us like it's like your 30-second pitch for why this should be a priority when you're thinking about websites or other. How do we justify spending time in already busy schedules on some of this?
Well, I think you just want to make sure that all users in your community are able to use everything that you're providing, that you're planning, all your services. You are serving, just like we're serving the entire state of Iowa, you guys are serving your entire community, so you want to make sure that you're able to do that. You're not leaving anyone out, whether it's due to a disability or whatever. You just want to make sure that your content, your physical space, your web content, your documents are all inclusive and can serve everyone the same way.
It's the heart of what it means to be a library,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Here's a question that I think might be a little loaded, maybe not, or I think you're gonna
I love
say
a loaded question.
depends. Are PDF files readable by screen readers?
I am going to say it depends.
There you go.
It has to be created correctly. If it's just a PDF, then yes, but if it's like sometimes PDFs can be treated as a photo, and so then it won't read the actual words on the PDF.
So if I'm remembering right, a way that you can kind of test this for yourself without having a screen reader installed would be if you can copy and paste text out of that document, then it would be readable by a screen reader. But if you go to grab and highlight it with your mouse and your mouse won't grab any actual text, then that document is sort of captured as like an image, right?
Image.
And then a
Correct.
screen reader would not know how to handle that.
That is absolutely correct. Yep.
All right. So there's a good way to test that. And I
Yeah.
think it also comes a lot when if you've scanned a document versus if you've created a PDF from a
Right.
Word file or something.
Right.
So Laura's question is also maybe going to be a little bit of it depends. Adding alt text to images, for example, is that something we can do easily, or do we need a web consultant to do those kinds of things for us?
I think it depends on I think if you have access to
But so
do
if
that.
you manage your own if you manage your library's website, when you go to upload an image, there's likely a text box that would pop up when you uploaded that image that would say something like alternate text or image
Right.
description or something like that.
Yes,
So
it would say alt text. Yes.
yeah, if you're the webmaster, in addition to being the library director and the sometimes janitor and all the other busy things that you do, yeah, you would be able to add in that text yourself.
Yes, and it is also an option in Word documents and things like that as well. If you
Yes.
send those
Yep.
electronically, you can include, for the screen reader, you can include alt text in Word documents as well.
If you were going to start, Leslie, with sort of a accessibility type of audit, what would be your first sort of low-hanging fruit of something that you would do first to make a website more accessible? Would it be alt text? Would it be contrasting colors? Would it be something else?
I think it would probably be, yeah, I think alt text would be the first thing I would focus on, and maybe just the structure, if you have the power to change the structure and make sure that everything, it is kind of broken into different headings, and everything is labeled. I know we have some issues, like there might be a table somewhere and the screen reader will just say table with no information, and then the screen reader doesn't know what the table is of. So just kind of creating that description as short and concise as you can. I know it's hard with websites because I know a lot of libraries don't have control of their like actual structure of their site, and they're just kind of adding the content, the words, the text. So just making sure that it's kind of broken into sections that a screen reader can tab through those different subsections and sections would be important. And the wave accessibility checker does tell you, will give you hints on where the problem areas are for that.
Yeah, so run that accessibility checker, see
Yeah.
what it identifies. Okay, another question here. Cities and public libraries need to be WCAG compliant by April 2027. Is that correct? And how do we prepare for that in libraries that don't have dedicated webmasters? Are accessibility plugins a reasonable option for smaller libraries that don't have web development expertise?
Um, so the WCAG, the WCAG, I I honestly I don't know that by April, what'd you say, was it 2027?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do know there are some really good guidelines at if you go to the CAST website, the UDL guidelines.cast.org. Maybe I could put that in the chat. They have a
Mm-hmm.
great section on the WCAG and the new guidelines that just were released, and what you can do with those. What was the second half of what was the, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, are accessibility plugins a reasonable option for smaller libraries who don't have web development expertise?
I think it would be a reasonable option. We're actually in the process of redesigning our website. And we do some just checking here because we do have a lot of screen readers. So we kind of do a little in-house, but there are some accessibility plugins that do a good job of helping you with that and checking as well. Um, and I can send one of those. I'd have to find it, but I could send that to Sam too and include it with the slides. Does that answer your question? Not really. Sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna put from the ADA into the chat here. ADA.gov issued earlier this year in March. They put down some guidance saying that by 2027, 2026 for larger cities, the level of compliance that folks have to reach. So libraries would be part of their city government. So this is definitely something you're going to want to be talking with your city about as
Mhm.
well, and looking into. I am one thing that I'm not sure of with regard to those rules is how things um, like a local history repository might come into play if you have digitized newspapers and that sort of thing. That would definitely not be compliant, I am guessing, because they would be scans of very old pieces of newsprint, for example, or other historical artifacts.
Mhm.
Um, how that sort of thing would come into play under these rules, I'm imagining there'd be some sort of exception for that type of thing, um, but worth looking into as well. So thank you for those questions. Um, any closing questions or thoughts from folks as we move to wrap up here?
I did put in the chat the UDL guidelines. Just takes you to the website for the UDL guidelines, but there's a on that page there's a great section about the new updates to the W.
WCAG. Well, good enough. My thanks, Leslie, for joining us today, and to those of you who are able to be with us. Leslie's contact information is up there on the screen. I just encourage you to reach out to her with questions on this. The Library for the Blind and Print Disabled is a fabulous resource in our state, and they're here to help with this and indeed so many other things in your library. They can just be a great partner to blind and low vision Iowans and you as you serve them as well. So look for the next lesson in Workday Learning, which will be your course evaluation. We will be sure to get attendance taken here in the next little bit, and that evaluation will be open to you. So thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right.